The sterling silver fork felt foreign in my hand, heavier than it should have been, as I watched Marcus lean back in his chair with that familiar smirk playing across his lips. His mother, Vivienne Hartwell, had just asked what I did for a living, and the pause that followed stretched like taffy, sweet and sticky and nauseating. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Oh, Rachel, Marcus laughed, reaching for his wine glass. She's between things right now. Aren't you, sweetheart? Between things. As if I were a package suspended in shipping limbo, rather than a person sitting 3 feet away. The mahogany dining table gleamed under the chandelier's light, each crystal casting fractured rainbows across the faces of the Hartwell family. Marcus's father, Gregory, adjusted his reading glasses perched on his nose, studying me like I was a balance sheet that didn't quite add up. His sister, Cordelia, barely suppressed a snicker behind her napkin. "I see," Vivian said, her voice dripping with the kind of sympathy that isn't sympathy at all. "How unfortunate. And how long have you been, shall we say, exploring your options?" I took a sip of water, letting the ice cube clink against my teeth. 6 months. That's how long I'd been dating Marcus Hartwell, the golden boy of Connecticut's old money elite. 6 months of keeping my real life sealed behind walls he never thought to scale. 6 months of listening to him describe me to his friends as refreshingly simple and not materialistic like those other girls. What he meant was poor. What he meant was beneath him. "I'm considering several opportunities," I said carefully, the same script I'd perfected over months of these performances. "The market has been challenging." "Hasn't it, though?" Gregory interjected, cutting into his beef Wellington with surgical precision. "We've certainly felt the pinch ourselves. These new lending regulations, the interest rates, all of it squeezing the life out of honest businessmen. The banks have become predatory. Absolutely predatory." I felt my jaw tighten involuntarily. My fingers pressed harder against the fork's handle. "Father's having trouble with some loan restructuring," Marcus explained, his hand finding my knee under the table. The gesture might have seemed comforting to an observer, but I felt the condescension in it, the proprietary claim. "Nothing we can't handle, of course. The Hartwell name still carries weight in this state." The Hartwell name. I'd heard about it ad nauseum since our first date at that overpriced Italian restaurant where Marcus had ordered for me without asking what I wanted. The Hartwells of Hartford. 3 generations of real estate developers who'd built half the commercial district before the 2008 crash. They'd survived that storm, Marcus loved to remind me, because old money knows how to weather hard times. What Marcus didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd spent the last 3 years studying exactly how the Hartwells had weathered those hard times. Every loan restructuring, every property leveraged, every shell company created to shield assets while regular people lost their homes. My dissertation at Yale had been focused on predatory lending practices in Connecticut, and the Hartwell family had featured prominently in Chapter 7, though I'd been careful to change their names for publication. "Rachel doesn't really understand these complex financial matters," Marcus continued, squeezing my knee again. "Do you, babe?" Cordelia actually laughed out loud this time. "Well, she's pretty, Marcus. That counts for something." Pretty. I wanted to throw my water in her face. Instead, I smiled sweetly, the same smile I'd practiced in mirrors since I was 16, working double shifts at my mother's diner while applying to colleges no one in my family had ever dreamed of attending. "You're too kind," I murmured. "I still don't understand what Marcus sees in someone so ordinary," Vivian said to Gregory, as if I weren't sitting right there. "No family connections, no education to speak of, no career prospects. What exactly does she bring to the table?" The education comment nearly broke me. My bachelor's from Princeton, my MBA from Yale, my current position as Vice President of Risk Assessment at Silverton Trust and Loan, the fifth largest private lending institution in the Northeast. All of it hidden behind a fabricated story of community college dropout and retail work. Why had I done it? The question haunted me some nights, lying awake in Marcus's expensive sheets in his expensive apartment, listening to him snore with the confidence of someone who'd never worried about money. I told myself it was research, an extension of my academic work. I wanted to see how people with old money really behaved when they thought no one important was watching. But the truth was darker than that. I'd been burned before by men who wanted my success more than they wanted me. My ex-fiancé, Daniel, had seemed perfect until I got promoted above him. Then came the subtle undermining, the jokes about my aggressive career focus, the suggestion that maybe I should dial it back so he didn't feel emasculated. We'd imploded spectacularly 6 months before I met Marcus. So when Marcus approached me at that fundraiser, when I was wearing my least expensive dress and staying quiet in the corner, observing rather than networking, I'd made a split-second decision. I told him I was there as someone's plus one, that I worked in retail. And he'd believed it instantly because it fit the narrative he wanted. The pretty girl who needed him, who would be grateful for his attention and his money and his guidance. The experiment had become something else entirely when I realized who his family was. When I connected Marcus Hartwell to Gregory Hartwell, properties. When I understood that fate had handed me something extraordinary and terrible. "She brings companionship," Marcus said now, his voice taking on a defensive edge. "Not everything is about money and status, Mother." "Of course not, darling," Vivian replied, her smile sharp as the silver knives arranged by her plate. "But it certainly helps, doesn't it? Especially now, with everything your father is dealing with." I caught the look that passed between Gregory and Vivian. Worry, thinly veiled by their aristocratic masks. They were scared, I realized. And they should be. 3 weeks ago, Silverton Trust had acquired a portfolio of distressed commercial loans from a failing regional bank. Standard business. We'd been analyzing the accounts, looking for recoverable assets, potential restructures, and likely foreclosures. That's when I'd seen it. Hartwell Properties. $67 million in outstanding loans, most of them already in default. All secured by properties that were worth maybe 40% of their assessed value on paper. The Hartwells were drowning, and they didn't even know the water was already over their heads. My supervisor, Catherine Reeves, had assigned me the account before I could recuse myself, before I could explain that I had a personal connection. By the time the file landed on my desk, Catherine was already in emergency surgery for a ruptured appendix, and I was interim head of the department. The review period was 30 days. We were on day 23. "How is the loan situation, Father?" Cordelia asked, apparently deciding to abandon all pretense of polite dinner conversation. "You said you were meeting with the bank this week." "Next week," Gregory corrected, his jaw tightening. "We're negotiating terms with some new institution that bought our paper. Silverton something. Never heard of them, but they seem reasonable enough. Our attorney is confident we can restructure. I nearly choked on my water. Marcus patted my back. You okay? Fine, I managed. Wrong pipe. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Reasonable. They thought Silverton was reasonable because they were used to dealing with their old bank, First Hartford Trust, where Gregory's college roommate sat on the board. First Hartford had extended their loans year after year, ignoring market conditions and basic risk assessment because of relationships and country club memberships and the soft corruption that old money called networking. But First Hartford had failed spectacularly 9 months ago, and Silverton had cherry-picked their best accounts. The Hartwells weren't among the best accounts. They were among the worst. I'm sure it will work out, Marcus said confidently. Father always figures these things out. He's brilliant with money. Brilliant with money. The man who'd taken out variable rate loans at the peak of the market, who'd built luxury condos in neighborhoods that couldn't support luxury prices, who'd mortgaged properties he already owned to finance properties he couldn't afford. If Gregory Hartwell was brilliant with money, I was the Queen of England. Of course he will, I said softly. He seems very capable. Vivian smiled at me then, a genuine expression of appreciation for my deference. You're a sweet girl, Rachel. Perhaps Marcus is right to keep you around. You don't have ambitions to speak of, which means you won't be competing with him. Some women these days are so aggressive about their careers. It's unfeminine. I thought about my office on the 42nd floor of Silverton Tower. The view of the harbor. The Eames chair behind my custom desk. The awards on my wall for risk assessment innovation. The team of 15 analysts who reported to me. The salary that was probably triple what Marcus made at his father's company. I believe in supporting my partner, I said instead. See? Marcus beamed, his arms sliding around my shoulders. This is why I'm crazy about her. She gets it. She understands what's important in a relationship. What's important in a relationship? Knowing your place. That's what he meant. Being satisfied with scraps from the table while the real feast happened without you. Dinner dragged on through 3 more courses. The conversation meandered from the country club's new chef, subpar, according to Vivian, to Cordelia's upcoming wedding to a derivatives trader from Manhattan, excellent bloodline, according to Gregory, to Marcus's prospects for partnership at his father's firm, assured, according to everyone. I nodded and smiled and said very little, playing my role perfectly. The invisible girlfriend. The placeholder until someone more suitable came along. I could see it in Vivian's eyes every time she looked at me. Temporary. What they didn't see, what they couldn't see because they'd never bothered to really look, was the calculation behind my silence. The analysis running constantly in my mind, weighing options and outcomes, running probability scenarios the way other people counted sheep before sleep. In my purse, tucked next to my lipstick and keys, was my real phone. Not the cheap prepaid one I showed Marcus when he asked, but my actual iPhone with my work email and encrypted files and text messages from my team. Before dinner, I'd gotten a notification from James Chen, my senior analyst. He'd completed the property valuations for the Hartwell portfolio. The news wasn't good for the Hartwells. It was worse than we'd initially projected. Current market value of their holdings, $38 million. Outstanding loan balance, $67 million. Shortfall: $29 million. Under Silverton's standard operating procedures, accounts with that kind of gap defaulted immediately to foreclosure proceedings. No restructure, no negotiation, just liquidation of assets and aggressive pursuit of personal guarantees. And here was the beautiful, terrible irony. Every loan in the Hartwell portfolio carried personal guarantees from Gregory Hartwell. The man had pledged everything, including the 16-room mansion where we were currently eating dinner, the vacation home in the Hamptons, even the trust funds he'd established for Marcus and Cordelia. When Silverton foreclosed, the Hartwells wouldn't just lose their business. They would lose everything. "Rachel, are you listening?" I snapped back to attention. Marcus was staring at me expectantly. "I'm sorry." "What?" He sighed, the sound carrying just enough exasperation to remind everyone at the table of my inadequacy. "I was saying that we're hosting a party next month. Father's 60th birthday. It's going to be quite the event. Everyone who's anyone in Connecticut will be there." 200 guests, Vivian added, catered by that wonderful French restaurant. Live orchestra. It's going to be spectacular. Gregory raised his glass. A celebration of 6 decades and many more to come. The Hartwell legacy continues. They all clinked glasses, a toast to their immortality. I raised my water glass half-heartedly. The party was scheduled for 4 weeks from now. My report on the Hartwell portfolio was due in 7 days. The foreclosure process, once initiated, would take approximately 3 weeks to complete, accounting for notification periods and legal requirements. The math was simple. The Hartwells would receive their foreclosure notice roughly 2 weeks before Gregory's birthday party. Before 200 of Connecticut's elite gathered to celebrate a man who would, by then, be publicly ruined. "You'll come, of course," Marcus said to me. "It'll be good for you to meet more of our circle. Might even help you network, find some job opportunities." Find a job. At a party that probably wouldn't happen because the venue was one of the properties secured by their defaulted loans. "I'd be honored," I said. "Just make sure you dress appropriately," Cordelia interjected. "I know your budget is limited, but maybe Marcus can loan you something." Loan me. The choice of words was almost poetic. "I'll figure something out," I replied, my voice even. After dinner, we moved to the drawing room for coffee and brandy. The drawing room. They actually called it that, like we were in a Victorian novel. I perched on the edge of an antique settee that probably cost more than my mother had made in a year at the diner, watching Marcus chat with his father about market conditions and interest rates. 2 men who understood money the way I understood astrophysics. My phone buzzed silently in my purse. I excused myself to use the bathroom, climbing the grand staircase with its family portraits lining the walls. Generations of Hartwells staring down with the same confidence Marcus wore. The certainty that the world would always bend to accommodate them. In the bathroom, I pulled out my real phone. 3 messages from James. "Boss, the numbers are worse than we thought. Found some offshore accounts they tried to hide. This is a criminal referral situation. Also, Gregory Hartwell personally guaranteed everything. Everything. They're going to lose the house. Call me when you can. This is going to be messy." Messy. That was one word for it. Another word might be catastrophic, or devastating, or exactly what they deserved. I leaned against the marble sink, staring at my reflection in the gilt-framed mirror. I looked the part I was playing: simple makeup, modest dress, hair pulled back in an understated ponytail. Rachel Mitchell, the nobody. The girl who didn't understand complex financial matters. The pretty face with nothing behind it. But my eyes told a different story. They were calculating, cold, analyzing probabilities and consequences. They were my mother's eyes, fierce and uncompromising. The eyes of a woman who'd worked herself to exhaustion to give her daughter opportunities she'd never had. They were my grandmother's eyes, sharp as the bookkeeper's pencil she'd used to manage accounts when women weren't supposed to understand numbers. I was Rachel Mitchell, yes. But I was also the granddaughter of women who'd survived by being underestimated. I was the daughter of a waitress who'd made sure her child learned that power wasn't given, it was taken. I was the first person in my family to get a college degree, let alone 2 advanced degrees from Ivy League schools. And I was the vice president of risk assessment at Silverton Trust, the person who would sign the foreclosure order that would destroy the Hartwell family. The question was, would I? I could recuse myself even now. I could claim conflict of interest, pass the file to one of my colleagues. Someone else would make the decision, and I could tell myself my hands were clean. I could continue dating Marcus, maybe even let the relationship reach its natural conclusion when he inevitably found someone from his own social class. I could walk away. But walking away would mean letting them win. Letting them continue to believe that people like me, people without the right last names and the right schools and the right connections, were lesser than them. It would mean accepting that their cruelty tonight and every night before was just how the world worked. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was my mother. "How's dinner with the rich folks? Are they as awful as you expected?" I smiled despite everything. My mother knew about Marcus, knew I was dating someone from money, but she didn't know the full story. Didn't know about Silverton, or the foreclosure, or any of it. I'd learned early to compartmentalize my life, to keep the different versions of Rachel separate and sealed. "Worse," I texted back, "but enlightening. Remember what I always told you, baby? Rich people aren't better than us. They're just richer. And money doesn't make you a good person." "I know, Mom. I love you." "Love you too. Don't let them make you feel small." Too late for that. But maybe not too late to make them feel something in return. I splashed water on my face, careful not to ruin my makeup, and headed back downstairs. The sound of laughter guided me back to the drawing room, where I found Marcus and his family in high spirits. "There she is," Marcus said, extending his hand to me. "We were just talking about our vacation plans. Father's thinking about lending us the Hampton house for a long weekend. Would you like that? The Hampton house that would be seized by my bank in less than a month." "That sounds wonderful," I said. "Of course you'll need to learn how to properly entertain," Vivian interjected. "The Hampton house comes with certain expectations, the right guests, the right caterers. It's not just a vacation, it's an obligation. An obligation to maintain appearances, to perform wealth even when wealth was evaporating like morning dew." "I'm a quick learner," I assured her. "We'll see," she replied, her tone making it clear that she didn't believe me. The evening finally wound down around 10:30. Gregory shook Marcus's hand and gave me a brief, dismissive nod. Vivian air-kissed near my cheeks without actually touching me. Cordelia was already on her phone, ignoring my goodbye entirely. In Marcus's Tesla, driving back toward his apartment in the city, the silence felt thick enough to choke on. "They liked you," he said finally. I turned to look at him, searching for signs of irony, but found none. He genuinely believed what he was saying. "Did they?" "Absolutely. Mother said you were sweet. That's high praise from her." "Sweet. Like a child or a pet. Not an equal. Never an equal. I'm glad. I managed. His hand found mine across the center console. I know they can be a bit much sometimes, but they mean well. They just want the best for me. And honestly, they're worried about money right now, which makes them cranky. Once this loan thing gets sorted out, they'll relax. The loan thing. As if $67 million in defaulted debt was a minor inconvenience, like a traffic ticket or a broken appliance. I hope it works out for them, I said, and I was surprised to find that part of me meant it. Not for Gregory and Vivian, who'd spent the evening making me feel like garbage, but for Marcus, who, despite his arrogance and condescension, didn't deserve to lose everything because of his father's hubris. Or did he? Wasn't he complicit in their world, benefiting from the same system that had crushed countless families? Hadn't he sat there tonight, watching his family belittle me and done nothing to defend me? Hadn't he been doing that for 6 months, keeping me as his secret project, the girl who wasn't good enough for public consumption? We pulled up to his building, a luxury high-rise with a doorman and marble lobby and elevators that played soft jazz. Marcus lived on the 23rd floor in a 2-bedroom apartment his father had bought for him as a college graduation present. The rent on a place like this would have been more than my mother made in 6 months, but Marcus had never paid rent in his life. In his apartment, surrounded by furniture he'd selected from catalogs and art he'd bought from galleries and books he'd never read arranged on shelves for aesthetic purposes, I felt the full weight of the lie I'd been living. This world wasn't mine. It never would be. And maybe that was okay. Maybe my world, the one I'd built through scholarships and student loans and 60-hour work weeks, was better precisely because I'd earned every piece of it. Nightcap? Marcus asked, already pouring himself a scotch from the crystal decanter on the bar cart. No thanks. I'm tired. He came up behind me, his hands on my shoulders, lips on my neck. You were perfect tonight. Exactly what I needed you to be. Exactly what he needed. Not what I wanted. Not who I was. What he needed. I pulled away gently. Marcus, can I ask you something? Anything. Do you ever think about what I want? What I need? He looked genuinely confused by the question. Of course I do. I take care of you, don't I? I pay when we go out. I bought you that necklace last month. I'm planning to help you find a real job soon. Maybe something at Father's company. I think about your needs all the time. Money. He thought my needs were financial. It hadn't occurred to him that I might need respect, or equality, or to be seen as something more than a project to be managed. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? I could tell him the truth right now. I could end this experiment, reveal who I really was, and watch his face cycle through confusion and disbelief and maybe, eventually, embarrassment. But the timing was wrong. The story wasn't finished yet. Nothing, I said. I'm just tired. It was a long night. He kissed my forehead like I was a child. Get some rest. I'll be up in a bit. I changed into the pajamas I kept in his drawer, washed my face, and climbed into his bed. Through the open door, I could hear him on the phone, laughing with someone, probably one of his friends from the dinner party. Yeah, she was perfect. Quiet, didn't embarrass me. Mother actually approved, which is huge. No, nothing serious, just seeing where it goes. You know me. I'm not the settling down type. Maybe a year or two more of fun, then I'll find someone appropriate for marriage. Someone appropriate. I was fun, but not appropriate. I was good enough for now, but not forever. I pulled out my real phone and opened the Hartwell file. The numbers stared back at me, black and white and undeniable. In my position, I had the authority to make one of three recommendations: approve restructure, request additional documentation, or proceed to foreclosure. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. One email to my team, one decision, and I would set events in motion that couldn't be stopped. The Hartwells would lose everything. Marcus would lose everything. And maybe he deserved it. Maybe they all did. But maybe I deserved better than revenge. Maybe I deserved to walk away from this whole mess and find someone who actually valued me for who I was, rather than who I pretended to be. I set the phone down without sending anything. The decision could wait until morning. I had 7 days before my report was due. 7 days to decide what kind of person I wanted to be. Marcus climbed into bed eventually, his body warm against mine, his breathing evening out into sleep within minutes. The confidence of someone who'd never lost anything, who couldn't imagine a world where consequences found him. I lay awake for hours, watching the city lights through the floor-to-ceiling windows, thinking about my mother scrubbing tables at the diner, about my grandmother's precise accounting ledgers, about all the women who'd come before me and survived by being underestimated. They hadn't survived by being sweet, or quiet, or appropriate. They'd survived by being smart, by seeing opportunities and taking them, by understanding that power never apologized for itself. Maybe I didn't owe the Hartwells kindness just because I was capable of it. Maybe the world didn't work that way. Maybe sometimes the people who treated you like you were nothing needed to learn what nothing actually felt like. My phone lit up with one final message from James. "Boss, I need your decision by Wednesday. The executive committee wants to move on this. They're getting pressure from the board." Wednesday, 3 days from now. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep, but my mind kept calculating, analyzing, projecting outcomes like it was wired to do. In every scenario I ran, someone got hurt. The only variable was who. By the time dawn broke over the city, painting Marcus's apartment in shades of gold and gray, I still hadn't decided. But I was close. So close I could feel the weight of it settling into my bones like weather before a storm. The Hartwells had made me feel like nothing tonight. They'd dismissed and diminished and mocked me, secure in their belief that people like me didn't matter. Soon, very soon, they would learn exactly how much I mattered. And by the time they figured out who I really was, it would be far too late to take back their words, or their cruelty, or their assumptions about who deserved respect in this world. The game was almost over. They just didn't know they'd been playing. Wednesday morning arrived with the weight of inevitability. I sat in my office on the 42nd floor, the Hartwell file open on my computer screen, my team waiting for direction. Through the glass walls, I could see James Chen hovering near his desk, pretending to review documents while actually watching for my decision. My phone buzzed. "Marcus, lunch today? Miss you." I stared at the message, then at the foreclosure documents on my screen. The duality of my existence had never felt more absurd. In one window, I was Rachel the girlfriend, sweet and struggling. In another, I was Rachel Mitchell, VP of Risk Assessment, about to destroy my boyfriend's family. "Come in, James," I called out. He entered quickly, closing the door behind him. "Boss?" "Sit down. We need to talk about Hartwell Properties." He pulled up a chair, his expression carefully neutral. James had been with me for 2 years, long enough to read my moods, to know when I was wrestling with something bigger than numbers. "I've reviewed everything," I said slowly. "The valuations, the offshore accounts, the personal guarantees. It's as bad as you said." Worse, actually. I found another shell company this morning. They've been moving money around trying to hide assets from creditors. It's textbook fraud. My stomach tightened. How bad? Criminal referral bad. The SEC would be interested. Maybe even the FBI. I leaned back in my chair, closing my eyes. Gregory Hartwell wasn't just incompetent. He was a criminal, and his family had been living off the proceeds of that criminality while treating people like me as if we were dirt beneath their designer shoes. There's something else you should know, James continued. I did some digging into their personal spending. In the last 6 months alone, Vivian Hartwell spent $400,000 on jewelry and clothing. Marcus Hartwell's American Express bill averages $30,000 a month. They're hemorrhaging money they don't have while their company collapses. $30,000 a month. More than my mother had made in a year. Spent on restaurant meals and bar tabs and whatever else Marcus did with his time. And the birthday party? Already has deposits down. $200,000 for the venue, caterers, orchestra. Non-refundable, of course. It's scheduled at the Waterside Estate, which is one of their properties. One of the properties we're foreclosing on. The irony was almost poetic. They were throwing a party to celebrate their legacy at a venue they no longer owned, paid for with money they'd stolen from creditors. "What's your recommendation?" I asked. James met my eyes. Professionally? Immediate foreclosure with criminal referral. This is exactly the kind of fraud Silverton built its reputation on exposing. The board would expect nothing less. And personally, he hesitated. I don't know your connection to this family, boss, and I don't need to know, but I do know you've been different since this file crossed your desk. Whatever's going on, you need to decide if you're going to let it compromise your judgment. He was right. I'd been compromised from the moment I met Marcus, from the moment I decided to pretend to be someone I wasn't. The question now was whether I would let that compromise destroy my integrity along with his family's fortune. "Give me an hour," I said. "Then I'll give you my decision." After James left, I pulled out my personal phone and scrolled through my messages with Marcus. 6 months of conversations, each one revealing a little more of who he really was. The casual dismissiveness, the assumption that his problems were more important than mine, the way he'd introduce me to people. "This is Rachel. She's between jobs." Between jobs, between lives, between versions of myself that couldn't coexist. I opened a new document and began typing my report. My fingers moved across the keyboard with certainty now, the decision crystallizing with each word. Hartwell Properties Risk Assessment, Final Report. After comprehensive review of all documentation, financial records, and asset valuations, I recommend immediate foreclosure proceedings on all Hartwell Properties accounts. Furthermore, I recommend criminal referral to appropriate authorities for investigation of fraudulent asset concealment and creditor fraud. The evidence supports the following findings. Total outstanding debt of $67 against assets valued at $38, representing a 43% shortfall. Systematic concealment of assets through offshore shell companies. Continued personal expenditures in excess of $500K monthly while in default. Personal guarantees from Gregory Hartwell encompassing all primary and secondary residences, trust funds, and liquid assets. Recommended timeline. Initiate foreclosure notices within 24 hours. Proceed with asset seizure within 21 days. Coordinate with legal counsel on criminal referral. This decision is made in accordance with Silverton Trust's fiduciary duty to our investors and shareholders. No personal conflicts exist that would compromise this assessment. Respectfully submitted, Rachel Mitchell, VP Risk Assessment. I read it 3 times, looking for any trace of emotion or revenge, finding only facts and policy. This was the right decision professionally. It was what any competent risk assessor would recommend. The fact that it would also destroy Marcus and his family was merely a consequence of their own actions. Or that's what I told myself as I hit send, copying the executive committee and legal department. Within minutes, my desk phone rang. Catherine Reeves, my supervisor, calling from home where she was still recovering from surgery. Rachel, I just read your report on Hartwell. Catherine, you should be resting. Did you recommend criminal referral? The evidence supports it. James found systematic fraud. A pause. This is going to be high profile. The Hartwells are connected. We'll face pushback. Are you asking me to change my recommendation? No, she said firmly. I'm asking if you're absolutely certain. Once we pull this trigger, there's no going back. These people will be destroyed. I thought about Vivian's condescending smile, Gregory's dismissive nod, Cordelia's laughter, Marcus's hand on my knee, claiming ownership of something he'd never valued. I'm certain, I said. They made their choices. Now they get to live with the consequences. All right, I'll back your recommendation to the board. Expect legal to reach out within the hour to coordinate. Timing. After she hung up, I sat in the silence of my office, waiting to feel something. Guilt, maybe, or satisfaction. But there was only emptiness, the hollow feeling of a game finished, a role concluded. My phone buzzed. Marcus again. Seriously, can we do lunch? I have news. News. I wondered what kind of news he thought was important, unaware that his entire world was about to implode. Sorry, crazy day at work, I typed back, then stopped. Work. I'd never told him where I worked, had always been vague about my retail job. I deleted the message and wrote instead, busy today. Maybe dinner? Can't tonight. Father's emergency meeting about the loan. Should be fine, though. Our lawyer says the new bank has been very reasonable. Reasonable? They thought Silverton was reasonable because we hadn't acted yet. Because we'd been thorough and careful and professional. But reasonable and mercy were not the same thing. Legal called at 2 p.m. By 3, the foreclosure notices were drafted. By 4, process servers were being dispatched. By 5, it was done. The Hartwells would receive their notices by end of business the next day. They would have 72 hours to cure the default, which was impossible given the amounts involved. Then the seizures would begin. I should have felt powerful. Instead, I felt tired. That night, I went home to my own apartment, the one Marcus had never seen, the one that reflected who I actually was. Modern furniture I'd selected myself. Art I'd bought from student shows. Books I'd actually read, their spines creased and pages marked. This was my real life, the one I'd hidden for 6 months while playing dress-up in someone else's world. I poured a glass of wine and called my mother. "Hey, baby," she answered. "How's everything?" "Mom, I need to tell you something." I explained everything. The lies I'd told Marcus, the Hartwell family, the foreclosure I'd just approved. She listened without interrupting, the way she always did when I needed to think out loud. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Do you love him?" she asked finally. "No. I don't think I ever did." "Then why does this feel so hard?" I thought about that. Because I became someone else with him. And now I'm killing that person along with his world. It feels like I'm losing something, even though I know I'm not. You're not losing anything, Rachel. You're remembering who you are. That girl he thinks you are? She never existed. You don't owe her anything. But I lied to him. And he dismissed you, belittled you, kept you hidden like you were shameful. You both lied, honey. His lies were just more comfortable because they matched what he wanted to believe. She was right. Marcus had been lying to himself about me from the beginning, constructing a version of Rachel that fit his narrative. My lies had just accommodated his. I should end it before he finds out, I said. Before the foreclosure goes through. That's up to you. But Rachel, don't apologize for being successful. Don't apologize for being smart. And don't ever let anyone make you feel small again. We said goodnight, and I sat in my quiet apartment, thinking about everything and nothing. Tomorrow the Hartwells would get their notices. Marcus would call me, probably, needing comfort from his sweet, simple girlfriend who didn't understand complex financial matters. But I wouldn't be there anymore. That version of Rachel was done. I drafted a text message to Marcus. We need to talk. It's over. But I didn't send it. Not yet. There was one more thing I needed to do first. Thursday afternoon, I put on my best suit, the Armani I'd bought after my last promotion. I styled my hair the way I wore it at work, sleek and professional. I applied makeup with precision, not to hide, but to enhance. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw exactly who I was. Powerful, competent, done pretending. I drove to Hartwell Properties headquarters in downtown Hartford. Their office occupied the top floor of a building they were about to lose. The receptionist looked confused when I asked for Gregory Hartwell. Do you have an appointment? Tell him Rachel Mitchell from Silverton Trust is here. He'll want to see me. 5 minutes later, I was being ushered into a corner office where Gregory sat behind a massive desk, his face gray with stress. Marcus was there too, and his mother, Vivienne. They all stared at me like I was a stranger who'd wandered in off the street. Can we help you? Gregory asked impatiently. I'm Rachel Mitchell, Vice President of Risk Assessment at Silverton Trust. I'm here about your loan portfolio. The color drained from Gregory's face. You're from Silverton? We weren't expecting anyone until next week's meeting. The meeting is canceled. You received foreclosure notices this morning. That's impossible, Vivian said shrilly. Our lawyer said we had time to restructure. Your lawyer was misinformed. The portfolio is in default and has been referred for foreclosure proceedings and criminal investigation. Marcus was staring at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Confusion, mostly. He hadn't put it together yet. I don't understand, he said slowly. Why are you here? Rachel, what are you doing here? I turned to face him directly. I'm here in my capacity as the vice president who approved your family's foreclosure. I'm Rachel Mitchell. I work at Silverton Trust. I've worked there for 3 years. The room went silent. I watched the realization move across Marcus's face like a wave, confusion giving way to disbelief, disbelief to understanding, understanding to horror. That's not possible, he said weakly. You work in retail. You're between jobs. I've never worked in retail, Marcus. I have a bachelor's from Princeton and an MBA from Yale. I make $400,000 a year. And I'm the person who just destroyed your family. Vivian gasped. Gregory stood up so quickly his chair rolled, backward. This is a conflict of interest, he spluttered. You can't be involved in our case if you're dating Marcus. I'm not dating Marcus anymore, and there was never a conflict because you were never going to get a restructure. The numbers don't work. They never did. Your company is insolvent. You've been committing fraud, and now you're going to pay for it. You lied to me, Marcus said. his voice rising. "You've been lying this whole time." "I presented myself honestly," I replied calmly. "I just didn't volunteer information you never asked for. You assumed I was nobody because that fit your worldview. You wanted someone beneath you, someone grateful, someone who wouldn't challenge you. So you saw what you wanted to see." "This is insane!" Cordelia burst out. I hadn't noticed her in the corner, on her phone. "You're psychotic. You targeted our family." "No," I said firmly. "I met Marcus randomly. Your family's portfolio was assigned to me by my supervisor. The only thing I targeted was the truth. Your father committed fraud. Your family has been living off stolen money. And now the consequences have arrived." Gregory's hands were shaking. "We'll sue. We'll destroy you." "With what money? In 3 weeks, you won't have any. Every property, every account, every asset tied to your personal guarantees will be seized. Including this building. Including your house. Including your precious Hamptons estate where you plan to throw a birthday party you can no longer afford." The words hung in the air like smoke. Vivian had tears running down her face. Gregory looked like he might have a heart attack. Marcus just stared at me like I was a stranger, which I suppose I was. I'd always been a stranger to him. He'd just never bothered to notice. "Last night at dinner," Marcus said slowly, "when my mother called you ordinary, when Cordelia laughed at you, when Father talked about people like you not understanding money, you sat there and said nothing. I said nothing because I wanted to see who you really were. And you showed me. All of you showed me exactly who you are when you think nobody important is watching." "So this is revenge?" he asked. "Because my family didn't treat you well at one dinner?" "This is accountability," I corrected. "Your family built an empire on fraud and arrogance. You treated people like me as if we were disposable. And you never once considered that the person you dismissed might have the power to end you." I pulled an envelope from my briefcase and placed it on Gregory's desk. "This contains the complete foreclosure timeline, contact information for our legal department, and documentation of the criminal referral we've filed. You have 72 hours to vacate any properties not designated as primary residence. After that, we begin seizures." "You can't do this," Vivian whispered. "I already have. The question now is what you do next. You can spend your remaining resources on lawyers who will tell you what you want to hear. Or you can accept reality and try to salvage whatever pieces you can." I turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Marcus, the necklace you bought me last month? I'm having it appraised and donating the value to a scholarship fund for students from low-income families. Students like me. Students you would have dismissed as not understanding complex financial matters." His face flushed red. "I loved you." "No, you didn't. You loved the idea of me. The grateful girlfriend who made you feel generous and important. You never loved the real me because you never bothered to know her." I walked out of that office with my head high, my heels clicking against marble floors that would soon belong to Silverton Trust. Behind me, I heard Vivian's sobs, Gregory's shouted threats, Marcus calling my name. I didn't look back. 3 weeks later, the foreclosure was complete. The Hartwells lost everything except one modest property Gregory had somehow kept in his mother's name. The birthday party was canceled. The criminal investigation was ongoing. The Connecticut social scene was ablaze with scandal. And I was in my office, reviewing new accounts, doing my job the way I'd always done it, with precision, integrity, and no apologies. My mother called that afternoon. "I saw the news about the Hartwells. Are you okay? I'm fine, Mom. Better than fine, actually. Any regrets? I thought about that. About Marcus and his family. About the life they'd lost. About the role I'd played in their downfall. No, I said finally. They made their choices. I just held them accountable. That's my girl. Oh, and Rachel. I'm proud of you. Not for destroying them, but for refusing to be destroyed. After we hung up, I stood at my window, looking out over the city. Somewhere out there, Marcus was probably drowning his sorrows, telling his friends about the crazy woman who'd ruined his life. Vivian was probably calling everyone she knew, trying to salvage their reputation. Gregory was probably meeting with lawyers who couldn't save him. And I was here, in my office, being exactly who I'd always been, Rachel Mitchell, the girl who understood numbers better than anyone gave her credit for. The girl who refused to be underestimated ever again. My phone buzzed with a message from James. New portfolio just came in. Looks messy. Want to take lead? I smiled and typed back, "Send it over, I'm ready." Because that's what I did. I assessed risk. I uncovered fraud. I held people accountable for their actions. And if sometimes those people happened to be the ones who treated me like I was nothing, well, that was just the universe evening its accounts. The Hartwells had taught me something valuable in the end. Power doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to. It just acts, quietly and decisively, while everyone else is too busy underestimating you to notice what's coming. I'd been underestimated my whole life. By teachers who didn't expect a diner waitress's daughter to make it to Princeton. By men who thought my ambition was aggressive and unfeminine. By people like the Hartwells who looked at me and saw nothing worth seeing. But I'd learned to use that underestimation like armor, like a weapon, like a secret advantage nobody knew I had. And now, standing in my office with my expensive view and my hard-earned credentials and my absolute certainty about who I was, I realized something important. I didn't need Marcus or his family to validate me. I didn't need their approval or their respect or their understanding. I had validated myself through years of work and sacrifice and refusing to accept anyone else's limitations. The Hartwells were nobody. They'd always been nobody, propped up by money they didn't earn and status they didn't deserve, mistaking inheritance for intelligence and cruelty for strength. But me? I was somebody. I'd always been somebody. They just hadn't been paying attention. 6 months later, I ran into Marcus at a coffee shop downtown. He looked thinner, worn, like the gloss had been stripped away to reveal something fragile underneath. He saw me and froze, his face cycling through emotions too quickly to name. "Rachel," he said finally. "Marcus." An awkward silence stretched between us, filled with everything we'd been and everything we'd never actually been. "How are you?" he asked, like we were strangers making small talk. "Good. You?" "Managing. Working at a friend's firm now. Nothing glamorous." He laughed bitterly. "Turns out my resume isn't very impressive when you take away the family name." I should have felt satisfaction, but I just felt sad. Sad for the time we'd wasted, the lies we'd both told, the potential that had been poisoned by inequality and arrogance. "I'm sorry it ended the way it did," I said, and meant it. "Are you?" His eyes searched mine. "You seemed pretty certain about destroying us." "I didn't destroy you, Marcus. I just stopped protecting you from your own choices. There's a difference." He nodded slowly, looking down at his coffee. "Father's probably going to jail. Mother's moved in with Cordelia. We sold everything that wasn't seized. Everything." "I know." "Did you plan it? From the beginning?" "No." I just wanted to see if you were different. If maybe I'd been wrong about people like you. And was I? Different? I thought about all the dinners, all the dismissals, all the times he'd introduced me as if I were a pet project rather than a person. No, I said honestly. You were exactly what I expected. He flinched like I'd slapped him. You know what the worst part is? I actually cared about you. Maybe not in the right way, but I did care. I know you did, Marcus. But caring isn't enough when you don't respect someone. And you never respected me. You couldn't, because your entire worldview required people like me to be less than you. I never thought you were less than me, he protested. You introduced me to your parents as nobody. You made jokes about my unemployment to your friends. You talked about me like I was temporary, something to enjoy before you found someone appropriate to marry. That's not respect, Marcus. That's possession. His face colored. I heard you got promoted. Senior VP now? Yes. Congratulations. I mean that. Thank you. Another silence. This one softer. We were standing in a coffee shop, two people who'd shared a bed and secrets and 6 months of lies, and we had nothing left to say to each other. I hope you find what you're looking for, Marcus said finally. Someone who sees you. Really sees you. I hope you learn to see people, I replied. Really see them. Before you lose everything again. He nodded and walked away, and I watched him go. This man who'd thought he was superior to me, who'd learned too late that superiority was a story people told themselves to justify their cruelty. I didn't hate him. I just didn't need him anymore. Didn't need his validation or his family's approval or any of it. I was enough, exactly as I was. The girl from the diner who'd made it to the 42nd floor through sheer will and intelligence and refusing to accept anyone's assessment of her worth except her own. The Hartwells were a chapter in my story, but they weren't the story itself. My story was bigger than their downfall, bigger than their arrogance, bigger than their inability to imagine that the girl they dismissed could be the one who'd end them. My story was about power, yes, but not the kind they understood. Not the power of money or status or inherited names. The power of competence, of truth, of refusing to be diminished by people who needed you to be small so they could feel large. I finished my coffee and walked back to my office, back to my life, back to being exactly who I'd always been underneath the disguise. Rachel Mitchell. Nobody. Everybody. The girl who proved that the most dangerous thing in the world isn't the enemy you can see. It's the one you never bothered to notice at all. The end. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.